r/AskReddit by Reddit and chill. Teachers of Reddit, they say there are no stupid questions. But what's the most stupid question a student has ever asked you? Had a student ask me what are those pyramid-shaped things in Egypt called? Never seen a class laugh that hard before. My wife worked with a woman in the Senate. They were staffers, a long time ago, just out of college. She, not my wife, said the Pentagon, isn't that the hexagon-shaped building? To be fair, that would confuse the hell out of anyone planning an attack. Sir, we can't find the Pentagon. There's just this big hexagon. Well, keep looking, damn it. It has to be there somewhere. I once projected a picture of the Earth onto the front whiteboard. A student asked, how do astronauts stand on a planet like that? Edit, was an 8th grade student. Being totally serious, not under any noticeable influence of illegal substances. The same way we all are standing on the moon right now. You must fulfill 3 wishes. I can't even begin to comprehend this one. I've shared this before, but as a high school biology teacher, a 16-year-old student once asked me, wait, aren't rhinos made of mud? At least he knows his Pokemon types. Why the rhinos aren't standing up? This one looks like it's way over level 42 inches. What the yuck? Not a teacher, but I have 1 or 2 of these in a sex ed class. Do VS have masturbates? Everyone looks at him like WTF is going through your head. Well, why else would they make flavored condoms? Edit. RIP my inbox. 2. Fixed up the grammatical issue. I do apologize if it upset anyone. It wasn't intentional. 3. Then a bit more context. This didn't take place in like grade 6. We were about 16. It wasn't some kid who might not have known. The guy who asked it was reasonably sexually experienced. 4. Arsenal. Logic is sound on that one. It is true. When you think about it, who the hell wears condoms when getting a BJ? People visiting prostitutes? 9th grade Ella, a few chapters into Of Mice and Men. What kind of work does George do on the farm? I'm not sure. Probably the same work that everyone else is doing. Oh, it must be hard for him to help out, since he's a mouse. Close enough. If I recall, George was repeatedly described as very large and brutally strong, but also liked to pet mice, but ended up killing them when he did. Lenny's the big dude. George is the smarter one that takes care of him. This student thought that Lenny was going off to work on a farm and George was the name of the mouse he kept in his pocket. That is so cute, edit. Terrible comprehension but cute. At the college midterm, I had a guy comes up to me that I've never seen in class. He proceeded to ask me what his grade is. Checked the sheet. He never turned in a single piece of homework. No quizzes. Never attended a test. What did you think you'd have? You've got a solid F. Have a friend who is a professor. He told me about a student that was failing pretty hard. Near the end of the term, the student pleaded for extra credits to bring his grade up. My friend, being an understanding guy, eventually relented, saying if you do X, I'll give you a passing grade. My friend never heard from the student again until the grades came out for that term. And naturally, the student failed because he didn't do the extra credit work. The student was pissed and actually tried issuing a complaint with the dean about my friend. He hasn't offered extra credit since. Edit. I misremembered. It wasn't extra credit. He offered the student the opportunity to turn in some assignments the student had never completed. I'm a liar. I'm sorry. Reddit. After a lengthy explanation of the effects of volcanic eruptions on human communities, I had a grade 6 student ask me why on earth people even make volcanic eruptions. Tourism. It's the best move the Hawaiians and Icelanders have ever made. You joke. But I know a bunch of Hawaiians who want the volcano to explode, so that it drives away the tourists and brings the housing prices down. I keep telling them, there is no way in the world I want to be Vesuvius, not to mention the volcano is on the other side of the island. But, Ernie, why do you keep exploding the volcanoes in Hawaii, Ernie? It scares away the crocodiles. But Ernie, there are no crocodiles in Hawaii, Ernie. That's because of all the exploding volcanoes. But, you're welcome. While I was student teaching, I had a student ask where Texas was on the map I was projecting on the screen. The map was of China. So the map was zoomed in a bit to the east. The kid was just trying to help you find a safe house. I believe the proper call is, do you have a Geiger counter? And the proper response is, mine is in the shop behind it. Private writing instructor. A couple of years ago, I had a student ask me if commas were real or imaginary. He was equally dubious about semicolons, which he referred to as imitation periods. Since people have asked, he was 26 and very serious. Edited for clarity. I took English at a local community college. One night while the class was working on something and the teacher was reading over Avrianes Behindinments from the night before, she stopped the class and said the following sentence. Guys, under no circumstances should a comma come in the middle of a word. I've seen several of you do this and I have no idea why. It was honestly pretty hard not to laugh. Mixing up, and perhaps, maybe they were writing in regex. In 7th grade science class during sex ed, they were talking about sex. Mormon girl in class, wait, you can get an STD just from talking about sex. I wouldn't call the question stupid, just no exposure at all to the topic beforehand. Sure, if you say AIDS 10 times in a row you get herpes. Well, I guess it could be worse. And then you get AIDS. My mom is a teacher Spahindistant in a 5th grade class. A few weeks ago a girl asked, are bears still real? Bears. Beats. Battlestar Galactica. One of these things is not real, you decide. To be fair, if things keep going the way they are, this will be a perfectly legitimate question in the future. Maybe the kid was just precocious. Edit. I now understand that bears are doing well lately. Thank you, everyone, for the heartwarming reminders. But climate change and deforestation are still things, and still a threat to these bears. And yes, I know what prescient means. And some things that should not have been forgotten were lost. History became legend, legend became myth, and for 2,500 years, the bear passed out of all knowledge. You can bet that some uncle was responsible for that. I am the type of uncle to which you refer, spreading science like Calvin's dad since forever. Thank you for recognizing our efforts. I've told numerous children that old pictures were black and white because that's how the world was back then. But the world didn't turn color until around the 1930s. I'm really hoping to get in trouble from a family member when someone finds out. How do islands not float away? Really big anchors. He wrote it down. Funny when a kid thinks this. Scary when it's a member of Congress. What the actual luck are you doing over there? Edit. From the Wikipedia. Johnson's office later backtracks by saying Johnson is simply a tremendous deadpan and that he was using a facetious metaphor. Edit. So I'm gonna put a fat disclaimer here. I'm not so sure anymore that this is as clear of an example of stupidity as it seems to be at first glance. It might be the case that Johnson actually is a tremendous deadpan. It was fun to believe that a member of the House of Representatives could actually be that stupid. But come on, guys. Even the dude who presented cold snow as proof that Earth was not actually getting warmer at all didn't think that islands could capsize. I don't like getting caught pulling off this kind of politics bashing, and neither should any one of you. Especially at times where irrational hatred resulting out of a misunderstanding of traditional politics that is fueled by politics bashing made an actual sociopath president. Just saying. Be fair to people. Be fair to politicians. Especially if the only thing at your hands is 5 sentences from a hearings recordings on YouTube. Comment that made me double check and post this edit. Also, read this. Edit. I'm fully aware that I'll let 1K upvotes happen before editing. Have fun counter-statementing that. I teach martial arts to little kids. I had a kid ask me if he could punch his mom now. Edit. You guys are great. Thank you for your funny replies. I'm having some good laughs. D. Well, can he? Actually, his level of skill was not enough. She could easily dodge. Needs more training. Then. This came up all the time when teaching kids how to do their taxes. I must have had this conversation a dozen times. Student. So I don't know what to do at this part. Me. What does the instruction say on that line? Student. Add box 23 and 24 and write the answer here. Me. So add box 23 and 24. I to this day have no idea how you teach someone to follow very explicit instructions. Row. They didn't teach taxes to me in school. We had 3 levels of classes: Essentials, Applied and Academic. With Essentials, kids doing taxes and personal finance was an entire unit. We never got beyond multiplying fractions with the Essentials kids. With the Applied and Academic kids, I'd do Let's Not Do Math Fridays every second Friday, where we'd do something that wasn't the regular lesson but some real life application or just something cool to do with math. I'd do the taxes talk then. How does it feel being the tech support equivalent of academia? As part of teaching US government, I ran a zombie apocalypse scenario where the students had to respond to an ongoing crisis in real time using the actual powers of the government as different parts of the government. It was my favorite activity all semester and I went all in, including with a large map of the US that would be updated for every day that passed. As part of this activity, I prepared a handout of a fake news story about the zombie apocalypse beginning in our hometown. It had pictures of zombies shambling around and was written all newspaper style. One day, after handing these out, an 18-year-old student raised their hand and said, "Mr. Crosage, did this really happen?" That's an amazing activity. When FEMA released their zombie survival guide, I definitely sat down and read the whole guide, instead of just doing a mental checklist of things that I think I need to prepare. Edit. Here's the link: zombie pandemic. Edit 2. According to this link, it was a joint CDC FEMA collaboration. The FEMA guide is actually a part of the overall zombie plans created by Homeland Security. Preparing against zombies happens to also work against everything from chemical bioweapons and pandemics down to mass rioting. So the government decided to take some notes. While discussing the Bill of Rights, if we got the right to bear arms, why can't we wear tank tops in school? Brilliant. If this was intentional, then it's actually kinda witty. Gun show. I'm not a teacher, but in 8th grade I had a classmate argue that Martin Luther King freed the slaves. When I tried to correct her, she flipped out and started screaming, name calling, etc. He didn't free the slaves. He wrote the Bible. Nailed the Bible to Lincoln's front door. Jeez, what an idiot. Everyone knows it was Martin Luther King Jr. that freed the slaves. Had a pupil ask me if the sun they saw in America was the same as the sun we saw here in Scotland, and why was their sun so much warmer. Edit. It. People acting like knowing what the sun is, and that there's only one, requires any more than nursery level knowledge of astronomy. The kid was 15. Living in Scotland. This one isn't hard to believe. PFFT, they're clearly not Scottish. They've seen the sun. Scotland. If you can see the mountains, it's going to rain. If you can see the mountains, it's raining. Also not a teacher, but when I was in high school in health class while going over reproduction, there was a fellow student who raised her hand and asked if you were sterile. Could you pass it on to your children? The whole class giggled and she, confused, said she was serious. She wanted to know, if you're sterile, could you pass it on to your kids? The teacher, with a smile, said to her, okay, let's think about this. What does it mean to be sterile? She began answering, it means that you can't have KOHHHHH. Semicolon, followed by another round of laughter from the rest of the class. To her credit, they're finding that people conceived using IVF are having difficulty having children of their own as adults. So not completely a dumb question, depending if you mean completely sterile or unable to reproduce unassisted. At university, I had a classmate that would often show up 20 minutes late to class. The first thing he did after sitting down was raise his hand to ask questions about what the professor had just said. Question after question until he had caught up with the rest of the class. Absolutely infuriating. That's a bad professor who allowed that. Here's how it would actually go. Student: wait, how did you get to that step? What was the previous step? Professor: do you have a question about this step? Student: no, I have a question about the previous step. Professor: then why didn't you ask it when I went over the previous step? Student: because I wasn't here yet. Professor: Tau jitty. Not a teacher, but there's one I'll never forget. Wyatt, Einstein is dead. This was a GCSE class. 15-16-year-olds. I had someone in my class who asked, so if Hitler was such a bad person, why don't they just kill him? Don't spoil the ending for him. I am an English teacher and I've had a few ask me if Shakespeare is still writing plays. Most of them are the smaller kids though, age 11, 12. So that's something I suppose. Grade 5 sex ed. I hate a rule that any question can be asked, but I might ask you to ask your parents instead of me. I heard a story about a man who put his stuff into muffins and fed it to grade 1 kids. Well, that is pretty disgusting and I would think that person would go to jail for doing that. Wouldn't the girls get pregnant from eating it? And before I could say anything, another student blurted out, no, they wouldn't get pregnant. They haven't gone through puberty yet. I am thankful for days when kids remind me that they are still kids. When I was in grade 5 sex ed, we were allowed to write down our questions for privacy, and the teacher would read them aloud. Having just viewed an episode of Ally McBeal that included a transgender woman who still had her N, my question became, if a woman has a N, does it work the same? I remember him opening up my question, staring at it, folding it up, and moving on. Not a teacher, but in 8th grade sex ed class, we had a box where students could submit questions anonymously. One day, the teacher read aloud one of the questions which asked, my dad's N is circumcised but mine is not. Does this mean he isn't my dad? Yes, he believed circumcision was hereditary. I'm glad to say I haven't seen my dad's N. Well, judging by your username, I'd say you're pretty bad at your job then. Bless his heart. Those anonymous question boxes are so useful. Someone in my sex ed class wanted to know where the bone comes from. I'm so glad people had a way to get answers to this stuff pre-internet, or post-internet, but especially pre-internet. After informing my West African class about the Boston bombing, is Little Wayne okay? Is he? I mean, he's got a codeine problem, so maybe not. A codeine problem. He ran out of codeine? If the patient have a brain hemorrhage, can we do a tourniquet on the neck to stop it? Well, I mean, technically yes. This kills a human. Not really a teacher, but I'm a federal budget analyst and had to train a new employee who had apparently been working in budgets for 20 years or so. So should have been able to quickly pick things up. She wasn't. When I finally got her on the right track with our year-end financial reports, I told her she was close but her numbers were off, so double check them. She responded with, well, wouldn't someone else just fix that? I know, that's exactly what you get paid to do. So you need to put the correct numbers in the report so we can publish it. What on earth would we do with almost correct financial reports? The next day she just couldn't figure it out, and I said, you're really close. It's probably just rounding, she said. Does it matter? How do you know when you should round it up or down? I said, yes it matters. Just use normal rounding rules. She asked what those are. I very slowly said, comma, you know, 0.5 or higher your round up. She had never been familiarized with that apparently. In the end I really felt like I would have been better off teaching a 3rd grader. My degree is in IT, but we were required to take an accounting class. Almost everyone in the class was a business major of some sort, with a good half of them going for accounting specifically. By the 2nd week, it had devolved into basic math lessons because an overwhelming number of students didn't understand the concept of 0.1 equals 10% equals 1 out of 10. It sucked for me because the prof was really good and I otherwise enjoyed it. We just lost a lot of time to elementary level math in a college course. This explained so much about why my accounting degree required that we have taken calculus prior to even starting any actual accounting courses. I've never used a log in any of my work, but now I realize they were just weeding out the people who couldn't count. Believe me, being able to do calculus definitely does not mean you can count. Source: physics major. How old do you have to be to smoke crack? A fellow student at Waukegan circa 1988. I'm a corporate trainer, so hopefully this counts. I used to train content for an exam that everyone in our field must take to get licensed. If you didn't pass, you had to go back through the course. Well, I had a dude go through my class 4 times. 4. Here's the conversation we had before his 3rd exam. Guy, what attempts am I on? Me. Wait, what? Guy. Well, I've taken the test twice, but everyone else in here hasn't taken it. So am I taking my test for the first time or the 3rd time? Me. What do you think? Guy, I don't know. That's why I'm asking you. Dude thought that he might be on his first attempt because he was back in a class with a bunch of people who were on theirs. Edit. Never fair. People of America. He absolutely did not get a license. Taught English literature in a juvenile justice long-term treatment facility. I have many great stories. Me. This is a map of the United States. Here is the Midwest. It's where your math teacher is from. Student. Oh snap. We're in a war with them. Me. Are you thinking about the Middle East? Student. Oh yeah. Is that a different place? Me. Playing a trivia game with students. Johannes Gutenberg invented what? Student. Shoots his hand up in the air quickly before I even finish the question and very sure of his answer. Cheese. Student. Reading The Three Little Pigs out loud, and the big bad wolf huffed and he puffed, and he passed it around me. I've never heard of that version of the story before, Mr. Student. You wouldn't. Mr. Ellipsis. It's the hood version. Student. Reading The Three Little Pigs out loud, and the big bad wolf huffed and he puffed, and he passed it around me. I've never heard of that version of the story before, Mr. Student. You wouldn't. Mr. Ellipsis. It's the hood version. That's hilarious. Now I want the hood version of all classical tales. Where should I subscribe? Surely there must be a subreddit for that. We were looking at the Japanese flag and a kid asked, is that why they wear that dot on their forehead? Not a teacher but a classmate of mine asked if Asia was a town in China, and, behinduming that she was right, said that it was crazy that so many people from our school came from one town. I teach elementary English in Korea. The best question I ever got was, teacher, what is chicken in English? If you teach English from England then it's Frenchman. How old was the average 18-year-old in 1942? He then managed to forget he was wearing his own glasses and asked everybody where they were. Not a teacher but a kid in my class asked me what the time was. I pointed to the analog clock on the wall, cause I was busy. He said I don't know how to tell that time. This was 2 years ago and he was 15. Edit. Wording and spelling. My kid has been struggling to learn analog time. She is in 3rd grade and they started teaching it months ago. I couldn't figure out why she was having a hard time until I actually looked at the clocks in her school. All the cloths are digital, and they are all wrong. So, I bought an analog clock for our living room and she is doing a little better with it now. I didn't think about the fact that she never uses an analog clock. So how can she learn it? Another good solution to this is to buy your daughter an analog watch that she really loves. It's excellent motivation. I had a really rough time with it but my parents bought me a Sailor Moon watch. It really helped a lot. My sister got a Minnie Mouse one. Also keep in mind that difficulty reading an analog clock can be a sign of dyscalculia, so keep an eye out for other tells like the inability to tell left from right, difficulty when trying to subitize objects, and obviously difficulty with math. It turned out my issues with analog time was a symptom of this, so it took until my teen years to get it entirely right, but the sooner you know about disabilities then the easier it is to learn. Ducking like and subscribe.